Isn't it weird when a game series treats a spin-off that you didn't play as canon and then the next main game continues to make a running gag out of that spin-off? Then you're like, well, I guess I'm not playing this game.
Yeah, I just got way ahead of myself, but it's just one of two things about this game that bothered me, but I'll get to those later. I haven't found much development history on the game except that Insomniac worked close with Sony and listened to a lot of customer feedback and refined the gameplay from the previous titles, which paid off pretty well as the game feels like a slightly improved version of Going Commando, which was pretty much a perfect game as it was. And after Going Commando, every game would follow the same formula, but the core game mechanics are still the same. It's a run-and-gun platform game.
This is one of those games where if you've played the predecessor, you really can't say much because nothing's changed other than it's a new story.
When I reviewed Going Commando, there was a significant difference in gameplay. While the core mechanics were still the same, there were a lot of things that were different, like an experience system that would increase your health and weapons, armor was available, and there was an easier way to get bolts. All that stuff from Going Commando carries over to up your arsenal. Even some weapons carry over as the game can read your memory card to see what information is stored on it from previous titles. Once again, this is the HD collection and the graphics look good, but they don't look that good in HD. They added more detail to Ratchet's textures, but they look pixelated in HD. Going Commando looked a lot better in HD though. So like the first game, the third game looks better in standard definition. The music is also much of the same of that technology is magic theme.
This is one of those times where I don't want to say it's more of the same because it is more of the same, but it's not really that bad because it does improve on a couple of things.
You still go from planet to planet, fighting enemies that range from small, medium, and extra large. Although in this game there's extra large and it's coming right for us. Yeah, there's enemies in this game that are massive in size and they take a lot of hits to take down and they're not even bosses. There's enemies that will take 3 fully charged shots from the shot cannon. Some have even taken 5. Which is weird because that weapon will carry you 3/4 of the way throughout the game. And it's your starting weapon which effectively makes it the weakest. The weapons in this game are great and are better versions of the ones that appeared in the second game. I enjoyed using them all and you can level them up the more you use them. In Going Commando you only get 1 extra level for the weapons unless you go into challenge mode. In this game the max level you get is 5 and then there's extra levels in challenge mode.
Here's some advice from me to you. Rotate your weapons because when you get to Quark's hideout, you're going to need everything maxed out. Otherwise, you're going to be crying because you realize that you've gone bankrupt replacing all those broken controllers.
In terms of difficulty, I found Going Commando to be the most difficult out of the PS2 trilogy and Up Your Arsenal to be the easiest. Except for Quark's hideout. Up until that level, I was having fun, platforming and whatnot. But now I gotta climb Mount Son of a Bitch, and my most powerful weapon is the shot cannon. It's carried me throughout the entire game until this point. So now I'm using everything in my arsenal and power leveling them because the Quark bots do a lot of damage. And there's tons of them, and they will quickly destroy any barrier in seconds, and they take a lot of hits to destroy. Before the encounter starts, there's a Gadgetron vendor where you can refill your ammo. After that, you are SOL because there are no ammo pickups except for 1 Gadgetron crate at the end. Now that may not sound so bad, but you have ice physics to deal with which severely limits your mobility, and you have 4 to 5 Robocorks shooting at you with rapid fire.
And that's just the beginning. After that, it's 8 more Robocorks, then another 8 more, and then after that, about 12, and after that, the game goes back to being easy.
I found this to be the hardest part of the game and strangely out of place. Up until this point in the game, it's a cakewalk, and after it, it's a cakewalk. While the last 2 levels are bullet hell type levels, they're easily manageable. While the Quark's hideout difficulty spike is not bad, I feel that it's just something to bring up due to its odd placement. And on an interesting side note, the Robocorks look a lot like Hack and Slash from the reboot cartoon. The game is also strangely paced. You're instantly thrown into the middle of a war with little to no explanation till afterwards. And then it's just action after action, and after the first hour, it felt like I was halfway through the game. At the halfway point, I felt like I was at the end of the game, and even the story is extremely fast-paced.
For a 10-hour experience, it feels like it's 40 hours, but moves at the pace a 4-hour game would. I'm not saying it's bad, it just feels kinda weird.
Out of the original PS2 trilogy, this has the best written story. It's also the funniest because of Dr. Nefarious, who is the funniest villain and is animated so well and is just the right amount of over the top. And he has the perfect sidekick in the form of a robot butler named Lawrence, who doesn't care much for his boss. Nefarious has a plan to destroy all organic life and rule the galaxy by turning every organic being into a robot. He's like Dr. Robotnik from Sonic Sat AM, only funny. The game also makes a running gag out of the PSP spin-off Secret Agent Clank, which I didn't play, and that's what I was referencing at the beginning of the review. We also get introduced to a potential love interest for Ratchet in the form of Sasha, a cat-like creature who is a pretty cool character, but sadly she isn't Ratchet, Clank, or Quark, so she's never seen in a main series title ever again. She appears in Deadlocked or Gladiator if you're in the UK, or Ratchet 4 if you're in Japan. She's only mentioned in Tools of Destruction, but she does appear in issues 3, 4, 5, and 6 of the comics.
I hate it when a lovable character doesn't get main character status immunity, especially when that character has really good chemistry with the main hero.
I'm not saying that Ratchet needs a girlfriend, but when you create a character that works well with the main hero, I think you should have them return more than once. Referencing Sly and Carmelita, two characters that play off each other really well, but hardly interact, and they both show a romantic interest in each other, and Sly constantly hits on Carmelita, so it's no secret to anyone that they like each other. I am not saying that Ratchet and Sasha need to be in a relationship with each other, far from it. But seeing those cute, little shy and embarrassing moments, like Ratchet asking Sasha to marry him or their reaction when Sasha kisses him, I like seeing little things like that. It adds some cute and funny entertainment while adding character depth.
It's not uncommon for people to like a one-shot character or for that character to become extremely popular. I'd like to see more of her because she just works really well with Ratchet is all, like how Brian and Stewie from Family Guy work together really well.
The fighting tournaments make a return, and there's a really cool minigame where you play as Captain Quark, in a 2D platform game within a game. And while a minigame, it does help push the story along as it gives clues on where you need to go. You also get money really easy in this game. I was able to buy nearly all the weapons and armor with no issue. But I do wonder, and this is something I noticed in the last game, the armor seems to be pretty ineffective. Enemy hits seem to take off percentages of health instead of set numbers. Instead of taking off 2 hit points, they'll take off 25% of your health. Because no matter where I went or what enemies I faced, it was like they all did a certain percent of damage. If I had 100 hit points and have the armor that reduces damage by 66%, and an enemy hits me and a third of my health is gone, does that mean with just the basic armor the hit would have killed me?
Maybe someone out there can answer that question for me, because if the enemies take off a set percentage of damage, then getting the armor is pretty much pointless.
I want to say that it is a percentage, because at the start when I had 10 hit points, the little guys that just punched took off 2 hit points, which is 20%. But then later on down the road when I got better armor and more hit points, they're still taking off about 20%. And the nanotech appears to restore a percentage of health instead of a set number. In the beginning it restores like 2 hit points, but towards the end it restores like 15. But I don't know, like I said, it's an assumption. There's also these battles that you're tasked with having to do that are rather pointless because it doesn't add anything to the story. You're required to go down to whatever planet that there's an invasion and destroy the enemies and set up turret defenses. You do get rewarded for it and you're given a gadget you need. But I don't see why there couldn't have been a story-driven reason to do it. You'll find yourself doing things that follow the main story, but then for some reason you need to take this little side trip.
I'm not complaining because these sections are pretty fun. It just feels out of place in a story-driven game where these sections have no bearing on the story.
But in conclusion, out of the original PS2 trilogy, I think Up Your Arsenal is the best. It's the most balanced, best written, and funniest in my opinion. I really enjoyed and had fun with it, so there's no surprise as to why this is the highest rated game in the series according to Metacritic and game rankings anyway. It's aged just as well as the other games, and out of the PS2 ones, I'd have to say this one's my favorite. Like the original Crash series, the Ratchet and Clank series are perfect examples of classic PS2 games. I highly recommend playing them, and I suggest getting the HD trilogy on the PS3. It's easier and cheaper to find rather than find all 3 on the PS2.
This is probably the perfect PS2 Ratchet game. It's a must play, and I would recommend playing it first in a put your best foot forward type of analogy.